We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by Prize Picks. What's up, everybody? It's week one. It's the big show. How's everybody doing? How we doing out there? It feels like it's been years. The week one show is always a good time because it feels like so much has happened, but it also feels like we were just here talking Super Bowl. You know what I mean? How's everyone feeling? You guys hear me all right? So far, so good. Love to see it. I know we have some OGs in the chat. So we got to make sure we shout out some names that have been here for years at this point. It's funny because you guys have probably noticed during the offseason doing a little bit more season long stuff, doing some redraft stuff, get everyone ready for the fantasy football draft. But I still see you guys in the comments too, uh, just waiting for this show in particular, which is cool because this is my favorite part of the entire week. Uh, so Wayne Casey in the chat, what's up, my man? Justin's in here. How we doing? We got the old school CMC emojis in the chat. Love to see it. We got the Stephon Diggs emojis in the chat. Love it. Casey Bones in here. What's up, my man? Family man. What's up? We are back. We are back. Mikey Boy, DJ Shane, A Web. What's up, guys? Hat on backward. Velveeta Cheetah. That's a good name. Ryan's in here. What's up, guys? How we doing? Winter Bell. What's up, guys? How was your off season? Casey Bone. Salvetri Hillbillies. Let's go. Let's go. Min Hall is in here. Frederick, what's up, guys? How we doing? How we doing? Johnny Mack, Derek's in here. Brian Santos, Nick Ponas. What's up, guys? How we doing? Chat was flowing this morning, even before we got going. So I love to see that. Yeah, CMC always injured. We'll get there. There's a lot of CMC stuff to talk through. Obviously, he's one of our guys, one of our like OG guys. Talking about OGs, want this show and just what I'm doing in general throughout the week to be like the best representation of like what I'm doing, what I'm interested in, and like what I'm spending time on. So off season, like I love the fantasy football prep season. I think it's so fun. Dive into each team, figure out which players are going to be undervalued, get everyone ready for their drafts. It's a great time. Building like launched it this year. It was always kind of a little bit of like a draft kit, but the Fantasy Accelerator, if you guys want to check out that, there's a link in the description for that. It's more of like a membership community for like 365. So we're talking through obviously in season waivers, trades, all that good stuff, rankings. That's where all my fantasy stuff is outside of like the videos that you see on this channel that are free. I go a little bit deeper into that. But if you're playing fantasy football, that's kind of my focus as of now, is building out that product. And then in the offseason, kind of leading up to that big reveal of draft kit season. And then I think in season, at least day to day, a little bit more focused on the sports betting, prop betting scene. I think that at least from like Monday to Thursday, I think it's like the most fun just to try and figure out what props are undervalued. I like to build like some of the videos that you'll see me talking through props. I'm building it more of like a DFS lineup anyways, and trying to build in correlation, those type of things. I think it's a lot more fun than like trying to pick sides or anything like that, which is obviously very hard from a sports betting perspective. But props, like this is kind of what we're doing anyway in DFS. So I think that's a lot of fun. But this show in particular, I think is like, it's very different than anything else I'm doing. It's really the only time I'm really talking through DraftKings, FanDuel, DFS type of strategy online anymore. And I'm doing it because of you guys, and I have so much fun doing this on Sunday morning. I know a lot of you guys are still playing a ton. But I think it's the best way that I can kind of show you guys what I'm focused on. It's kind of just like having these weeks in stages, right? So YouTube long form stuff, we're doing some more stuff with like actually like whiteboarding out kind of my thoughts on different players. We'll talk through waivers, we'll talk through trade targets, all that stuff from like a season long perspective on like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then some of the short form videos you see across Instagram, YouTube, TikTok will be more of the prop betting side. That's the plan for right now. But Sunday mornings, we're talking all DFS, DraftKings, FanDuel, all that good stuff. We tried to change it at one point last year, and you guys were not happy about that. But if I'm being completely honest, I think it's really fun to have like one like little block of time where all we're talking through is DraftKings and FanDuel stuff, because it's something I still really like playing as well. Do I do best ball? I do best ball. Yeah, like not like a lot more casually than like some of the other guys that you'll see, like the Peter Overzets of the world that are super in the weeds on the best ball stuff. That's kind of like their main thing. It's a good way to keep the content like updated too, since like usually the sharpest players are the ones that are pretty heavily invested in best ball during the offseason. AWeb has been a member for 43 months. That's crazy, my man. Let's have a day. Welcome back, man. This is sweet. So we start this, as we always do, with a poll. We're going to jump in and let's get going with who will be this week's highest owned player on DraftKings. Emeka Egbuka, one of our guys this offseason. Chase Brown, another one of our guys this offseason. Drake London, it's all of our guys. James Conner, Devon Achane, Jamar Chase. Who's going to be the highest owned player? If you're here for the first time, the way you get involved in these votes is you subscribe to the channel because I'm trying to just battle the bots these days. If you're subscribed, you should be able to be in the chat and then exclamation point, vote, space the number. You'll see some of the OGs in the chat nailing it. And then you just vote for your player and we see it on screen. Who do we think is going to be the highest owned player today? What do you guys think? As you guys are voting, I'm going to see if there's any other news that's come through as I was getting set up for the stream today. Micah Parsons won't get a full complement of plays in week 1 against the Lions. Okay. Let's see what we got here. Wow. Jackson Dart. The Giants have prepared a package of plays for rookie Jackson Dart. Jameson Williams signed an extension. Wow. 3 years, $83 million. Good for Jameson Williams. Travis Hunter expected to serve as an every down wide receiver and situational corner is exactly how they're phrasing it. Interesting. Highest owned player today, friends. Emeka Egbuka leading the way with 14 votes. Yeah, if you're here for the first time, the whole point of this stream is to get you guys involved. Let's make sure we get our feet set on what we think the best plays are. We'll go position by position. We'll build a lineup at the end. And then I kind of want to piece through what we think are some of the best tournament plays. We'll build a lineup at the end that we're not building hey, this is the team that we think is going to score the most points. This is the team that we think has a chance to beat a bunch of other people in a tournament. That's the goal. So I like talking through some of the best tournament plays, the game theory aspect of this. So week 1 is just such a good week to do that because we have an entire summer of talking through some of these young players, talking through some of these situations in general. And people end up being a little bit too overconfident, in my opinion. So we'll see ownership in these DraftKings tournaments really condense on certain players in certain situations. And this is one of the best times of the year to go, maybe not crazy off the board, but if you feel really strongly about a player, this is a good week to push those chips in a little bit. Obviously, with basically ownership kind of settling at this point of the week, but we've had these salaries out for so long that things end up being a little bit flatter across the board in some ways because there's situations where they're just underpriced because of what's been transpiring in the preseason, all that good stuff, right? So we see a guy like Emeka Egbuka, 4,600, end up being the mega shock. James Conner going to be splitting with Trey Benson more than people think. I agree. I also think that early in the season, though, we still might see a lot more James Conner. That for I guess that's one of the key topics we should dive into as well, is that we spend all this time working through what these players are going to be like, but we're projecting them for the entire season for fantasy. But if we're talking about just 1 week, in particular today, week 1, I think it's okay to just not have, you have all these takes over here for fantasy and for the season. We are able to feel slightly differently for a 1-game sample today, if that makes sense, right? I do agree with you guys that Emeka Egbuka going to be the highest owned player. I actually don't think that these other wide receivers will be too far behind some of these other ones. I think James Conner and Emeka Egbuka might be really close. We might see James Conner at 6,100 push Egbuka for maybe 25%. Smaller field stuff, I think 25, 26% is kind of where I have them slotted in. But I think those are the two guys. I'm surprised that there's not more votes for James Conner. Everyone just falling over themselves to play Egbuka today, though. And Tet, yeah. I think Tet's going to be right up there, too. He's a great play. We'll get there. What else we got for news? I didn't see a ton. Obviously, the McCaffrey stuff is what everyone wants to talk about, right? It looks like he's likely to play in week 1. Likely to play. Why can't they get... I hate that. This calf injury thing. It seems like, barring a setback, he's likely to go. But we will see. This Christian McCaffrey stuff, it's just so wild. Everyone just has, the scars from last year, obviously. But if he was a full go player right now at 7,300. He'd be almost like a, again, push your chips in type of play, I think, but it's tougher. There's some uncertainty there, especially with how good, I mean, the running back week in general is really strong. Also likely to get hurt during the game. Possible. Possible. Matthew Golden going off. Green Bay is such an interesting team this year. We'll get into that. Anything else that I've missed in the last little while? I'm not seeing a ton come through, but I'm sure as we progress, there'll be some other news items. So keep me posted on that. If you guys see anything interesting, let me know. But we are going to go position by position. So let's close this poll out. And let's jump into quarterback because I think we can kind of get our feet set with quarterback first. Who's going to be the best quarterback play today? Top quarterback, price considered on DraftKings. We got Jaden Daniels, Trevor Lawrence, Joe Flacco, Joe Burrow, Daniel Jones, Drake May, or other. We got a sea of quarterbacks today that are at least in play, in my opinion. And if we're talking through like just from a game perspective, some of the games that I really like for pace, for tempo, for plays, the Cincinnati-Cleveland game, obviously we got both the quarterbacks in this poll. Tampa Bay and Atlanta, I think, is interesting for plays. The Giants and Commanders, there's some pieces of that game that I really like. That Giants defensive line looks like the real deal. Jaden Daniels certainly in play at quarterback in that game. Some of the slower pace games that I'm kind of a little bit more hesitant on. The San Francisco team that's kind of lived off of efficiency. Seattle's going to play slow. Pittsburgh at New York Jets. I think both those teams are going to play slow. This Denver defense too. So in Denver, playing in Denver is definitely one of the tougher spots to go early in the season. Tennessee at Denver. Don't love that game for a lot of plays either. But I think the games that I'm kind of circling, at least in my head to start, the Cincinnati and Cleveland game. I really like this Miami at Indianapolis game. I think Detroit and Green Bay is somewhat underrated for some of the players that we have in that game. And then Tampa Bay and Atlanta. Did I miss any? Maybe Arizona. Those are kind of like the 5 games I'm looking at right now. 2025, we're talking about Joe Flacco. Wild, right? Where's the Baker Mayfield love? That's a good one, actually, because Baker was the guy that I was kind of bearish on this year overall, like in season-long stuff, just because I think that he basically ran so strong last year in the touchdown department. I think we'll see some regression there. But this Buka guy seems like the real deal. And then the other part of Tampa Bay is they just ran the ball a ton towards the end of last year after they had that OC change. So we'll see. We'll see if they give Baker the keys. I love Baker in general, though. He's like one of my favorite players to root for. BTJ kills it today. Yes, there's also some strong underpriced wide receivers, which we'll get to. He is one of them. He is one of them. Quarterback feels interesting to me though, because you're basically staring at, to me at the top end, it's like the Jaden Daniels and Joe Burrow stuff. So Jaden Daniels, we know that we're gonna get the volume on the ground, which is useful. Also a tough matchup against this Giants front, which is the real deal, like I said. But maybe that pushes into a little more running. Maybe it ends up being a lot of short throws for Jaden Daniels marching up the field, Terry McLaurin, Debo Samuel, get it in their hands, that sort of stuff. I could see that. And for DraftKings, like that's kind of an interesting route to go. And if you're just trying to stack players up, you're trying to capture a lot of that PPR upside, right? So I think that still makes some sense. And then Joe Burrow at 6,900 still feels pretty cheap. But if he doesn't throw it's the same story with Joe Burrow as it is in season long. If he doesn't throw for 3 touchdowns, you're in trouble, right, for what you're paying for him. But Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, both of those guys, like regardless of their price, they look pretty good even from a value perspective. So I mean, both defenses in this game don't look very strong. So we could see some fireworks in that game in general. Looks like Joe Flacco in the chat. Yeah, Flacco, I mean, I think it's really just a matchup thing. And you know exactly who Flacco's going to, right? It's the Jerry Jeudy stuff. It's like the David Njoku stuff. Really easy to stack. And the price tag. The guy that I think is kind of interesting is Trevor Lawrence. And it looks like you guys were on him in the chat as well. What do we think about Trevor Lawrence? Before I even say anything. Trevor Lawrence. We were just talking about Baker, right? The OC that unlocks Baker is now in Jacksonville. We got some new weapons. We're talking about BTJ. We love BTJ. 5,300 for Trevor Lawrence, though. The Liam Cohen stuff, though, I think cannot be understated for a quarterback like this that like just needs something to go right in his world, right? Like his ecosystem has just been a lot of chaos since he's entered the league. And he's definitely underperformed a little bit too. But going back to what Baker did last year in 2024, it's definitely bullish for Trevor Lawrence. And you want to be early on that, right? Brian Thomas Jr. still underpriced. Travis Hunter, like I said, he's going to be out there playing more offense and defense to start the year. Situational defensive player is what they were saying. And then the matchup's also strong. Carolina. I don't think Carolina's defense is going to be very good this year at all. So we like that game. So I think that one's kind of interesting too. The price is right. Kyler under the weather. Is that true? Is Kyler sick? I must have missed that. But I haven't seen a ton of Kyler love, at least so far this season. This week, I should say. BTJ works well with a low A dot yak, which is Cohen's scheme. I mean, BTJ still feels, I mean, for how high he was being drafted, still feels somewhat disrespected, if that makes sense, for the year that he had last year. Needs to prove it, I think. That's the thing. We don't have time to let them prove it. Like the week one is like prove it week. So as soon as you see it, some of the value of getting some of these guys in tournaments is completely gone. But I think people are on Trevor Lawrence. I think he might approach like the 10% ownership range. Like people are going to pay down for Trevor Lawrence, Daniel Jones. This Miami defense is not going to be good. We'll get some pace in that game, which is nice. We'll get some rushing upside from Daniel Jones. The Daniel Jones stuff is interesting too. Mark M, welcome, my man. Welcome in. Welcome in. Quarterback, I think we're talking more about like what stacks we actually like in general. Like we'll keep working through this obviously as we progress. I think for me, paying up, I still prefer Jaden Daniels to Joe Burrow today, but I could be talking to some Burrow stacks. Of course. Of course. If you wanted to add in Chase Brown to that, still makes a ton of sense, obviously. And then you got easy bringbacks on the other side, Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku. Like the Joe Burrow stuff still looks really good. I actually think that the Daniel Jones stuff, I guess that game in general is looking really good in some of my projections as well. So there's a lot of different directions we can go. I haven't really messed around with any Joe Flacco teams yet. In like that salary range, I've had a little bit more of like the Daniel Jones type of lineups, but we can talk through it. We can talk through it. Let's go to a more interesting position. Because I think that week one, we almost always get a really strong group at running back based on price and volume, right? So best running back play, price considered. I don't know why it says no Saquon on there. That must be from the Super Bowl. I thought I removed that. Devon Achane, Jonathan Taylor, James Conner, Chase Brown, Alvin Kamara. Bijan Robinson is on this slate. Haven't heard many people talk about him. I guess he's a little bit expensive, but you can get there. Or other. What do we think about running back, friends? What do we think? I'm going to try and not do too many start sits in the chat. I try and keep the start sits to some of the members in the Fantasy Accelerator. And it's just not that useful for most people. I'd rather like talk through the macro of some of these players, some of these games, talk through the DFS stuff on this show. Less start sits if possible. There's plenty of people that are doing start sits on Sunday mornings, though. There's definitely some shows out there that do it. I just don't find it particularly interesting. We got the rankings out there for the members. That's pretty much what I'll be defaulting to on the start sits stuff anyway. Best running back play on DraftKings today. Main slate, Jonathan Taylor getting some love. Okay. I dig that. Another one of those guys that I was a little bit more bearish on for the season, but as soon as we get Daniel Jones in there, his outlook does improve pretty dramatically. I think he'll get a lot more usage in the passing game, which is nice in comparison to Richardson. So I like that. And then at least in week one, 6,800 is just a really nice price against this Miami defense, right? High team total, Daniel Jones instead of Anthony Richardson, all that stuff. I think there's like some big play upside always, obviously with JT. We saw what he did down the stretch last year. I think that's from like from a season long perspective. What made me a little bit nervous was everyone's just holding on to this last like 3 game stretch or whatever that he had in the fantasy playoffs last year. But a lot of people that had JT for most of the year, it was such an up and down experience. They probably weren't even in those games anyway, unless they had a really strong team. Thoughts on Eckler? Yeah, I think Eckler's somewhat interesting, just like kind of in that Debo like vein that like if it ends up being a lot of dink and dunk, like kind of attack like this pass rush, I think it could be really what you want. Like it's exactly the type of player that you would want on that side of this offense today, I think. Love the H-Han stuff. H-Han was one of our guys this offseason. People are a little bit worried about that injury. I mean, I guess Tyreek too. They've been a little bit banged up, but this Miami team, I think, is a little bit disrespected as well. We'll see. I think I could see them coming off to a really hot start. And we're feeling like a little bit dumb just for ignoring because we know the exact players to go to there, which is there's always value in that. The Jalen Waddle stuff looks really good. I think he's picking up a little bit of steam from an ownership perspective, but 5,700 for him. You save $1,000 on Tyreek Hill. He got a little bit more time in the offseason, obviously, in camp with Tyreek banged up, with Achane banged up. Maybe they just schemed him up a little bit more. You never know. Waddle should have a day. I agree. Joe, appreciate you, my man. 4,000 for GACM. Interesting. Can you give me more picks for the early game? Yeah. I mean, we're gonna talk through like I one of the things that I like to as soon as we get through the positions, one of the things that I like to look at too is what types of players we would be looking at for late swap as well. So some guys that'll be like if things don't go well for you in the beginning, I think one of the things that people don't do enough of still in DraftKings tournaments is you have to see where your team is at. If you are behind after the morning games, we talk about this a lot, we should be late swapping aggressively to try and give ourselves a chance to move up the leaderboard. And even if things are going pretty well, but we missed on like one of the big ceiling guys from the morning, I still think you want to give yourself a chance to win and pivot into some lower owned, high ceiling players. So we'll talk through that too. We'll talk through that too. If you're looking for just some of my favorite players in the early games in general, I do have a video up from a props perspective talking about my favorite early morning prop bets. We have an afternoon only and an early only video that is up wherever you watch your short form, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Shorts. You'll find it. I'm out there. No one's hiding. Jonathan Taylor getting lots of love. Who else we got in the chat? James Conner. Yeah, we talked about James Conner a little bit. Only 3 votes, which is interesting because I think a lot of people will be on him today at that $6,100 price tag. Really just like the volume role, that workhorse. At least when healthy last year, he was actually really efficient. Number 1 in the NFL in juke rate. I had to like double check that 3 times during the offseason just to make sure that was true because you don't think of him like that type of player. And also the matchup, right? The Saints are one of the worst teams in the league. So I think that if you're going to be putting some chips behind James Conner, week 1's the time to do it. Noel fan in the chat. What's up, Noel? How we doing, brother? Thank you for that super chat. Congrats again on your big day, my man. Congrats again. Arizona going to have a lead all game. Yeah, the Saints, I mean, even just looking at the Alvin Kamara stuff in the offseason, the question is more what happens when this team is like out of things pretty early, but all these guys are undervalued. Shaheed, Olave, Kamara, like I have like a decent amount of shares of all those guys in season long. So if we get even like reasonable quarterback play, the defense is obviously going to be bad. There might be like some hidden upside there. I'll say that. Am I on many of those today? Not as much, but we can talk through it. I think wide receiver, you can talk yourself into almost anyone today. Almost anyone. Who else? Let's talk about Chase Brown because, like, kind of in that price range of like JT, James Conner, like the Bengals team in general, talking about a bad defense, but also Chase Brown. There was times like where he looked like Christian McCaffrey in terms of like his usage last year, how they were using him in the passing game, all of that stuff. I'm not really that worried about Samaje Perine. I know they re-signed him, all of that. I think they've locked themselves into Chase Brown being like a cornerstone piece of this offense alongside T Higgins and Chase, obviously. But I think you're going to see a lot of usage at the goal line for him again, even those like little dump off passes that we saw. High team total. Really like it. I mean, just I think the workload is what we're leaning into here with Chase Brown. Still undervalued. I mean, if you get there were most of the offseason, you can get him in like the third round of drafts. By the end of it, it was like the mid second round. But 6,600, way too cheap for a guy that's going to get 20 touches today. Ramondre Stevenson in the rain. First weather note in the chat. Love to see it. Worried about Chase Brown versus Myles Garrett? Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think they use him enough in the passing game to where I'm not that worried about it. The game strip is good for these pass catching running backs. I'm with you. Cleveland, Cincy, pieces are great. Yeah, that game just looks great in general. I'm worried that everyone's seeing the same thing, though. That's what I'm worried about. Yeah, we talked about if you're just kind of trickling in here, some of the games that we're looking at for like a lot of plays, high pace, Cincinnati at Cleveland, obviously. Tampa Bay at Atlanta, I think, is a little bit undervalued still. And then this Commanders and Giants game looks pretty good. Miami and Indianapolis is one of the ones kind of that I haven't made up my mind yet on, but there's definitely pieces of that game that make a lot of sense. Detroit and Green Bay, if you can figure out where to go, there's some upside for points there too. It just seems a little bit more spread out to me there. Achan's another one of those guys too that like the ceiling and just like his usage, like that usage through the air, especially for a bad offensive line in a game that we really like for pace. Achan, I think, has to be one of the guys that we're focused on. But James Conner, seems like I like James Conner a little bit more than you guys. JT is like that far and away top play in your guys' eyes. I can get behind that. But I think if I'm looking at James Conner versus like Achan and Chase Brown, I think he's right there from a price perspective, just on volume alone. If we're talking DraftKings. Pouring rain here in Foxborough. Interesting. Mobile golf season. Those are some of my favorite bets, are just like these statue quarterbacks to get like 2 rushing yards in a game. It's fun to cheer for. Connor, Kamara, Achan, like that's, I mean, these running backs are so strong today that I think most people are going to try and jam 3 into their lineups. No Bijan Robinson love. Is it a price thing for Bijan? Because if we're just talking like pure ceiling, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, I didn't even put Jahmyr Gibbs on this poll, but both of those guys I think pretty clearly ahead than like the James Conner, Chase Brown side of things. Just a price thing, I guess. But I'm interested if the ownership, if he has like single digit ownership on Jahmyr Gibbs, I think that's somewhat interesting. If we get like sub 12% on Bijan in that game, I think that's interesting too. I'm glad no one cares about Kenneth Walker today. I mean, that offense in general, I think, is super undervalued. They're going to run the ball a little bit. It's not going to be fast paced. Like, that's one of the games that I think could be a little bit slower against San Francisco today. But yeah, I'm with you. Let's keep this moving. I want to talk through some wide receiver stuff. But let's start at the top. Because if we are going to pay up for an elite wide receiver today, who is it? Jamar Chase, Puka Nacua, Nico Collins, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Malik Neighbors. So these are the highest priced wide receivers available. If you were paying up for one of these guys, who is it? If you're here for the first time, how these polls work, it is week 1, so we'll walk through it. Exclamation point, vote, space the number in the chat. You have to be a subscriber. That's the only way we can fight the bots on these live streams. So subscribe to the channel and then get involved in the chat. This is a collaborative experience. I don't have all the answers, friends. I can give you my opinions, all those things. When it comes down to it, you got to make your own decisions. But I want to I want this morning stuff, like these Sunday morning streams, to be very collaborative. You guys, a lot of the people in the chat have been doing this with me for a really long time, like years at this point, 4 or 5 years. So I'm using you guys as much as you're using me here. I got to get like the sediment in general. They say sediment, sentiment. Words are hard, guys. I'm sorry. It's early. Anyone in the chat come here from Instagram? That's what I'm actually really curious about. Am I wasting my time on Instagram trying to get the 124,000 view over here on the YouTube? Am I wasting my time over there? I like Instagram. So if there's anyone that found us on Instagram in the chat, I would love to hear. Did you make your way over here? Nico's gonna have a big day. If you feel that way, my man, then you may be in for some nice ownership on him today. I think you're gonna get sub 10% on Nico. Don't do Insta. Just have YouTube, give everyone doing live streams fantasy stuff. The fantasy scene on YouTube is very strong. Very strong. Shout out my boy Sal Vetri. BDGE, establish the run. There's a lot of great options on YouTube from a fantasy perspective, guys. Trust me. I'm trying to do things like a little bit differently. You'll probably saw on the channel too. I was like doing some videos in the off season, like doing some walk and talk stuff. Get the gimbal out, go for a walk, talk some fantasy. Those videos were like really hard to prepare for, and they took a long time to edit. So I ended up probably like doing less of them by the end of the off season. They were fun though. The idea was like trying to do something different than what you normally see. So like now, like the long form videos you guys will see on the YouTube channel, we're trying to like whiteboard some stuff out. I'm trying to give you like a few of my like just opinions on each player that we're talking through, just in a different package. So it's not just like the high like kind of just like retention style editing you see on YouTube, all the extras, all the flash and bells and music and all that stuff. I kind of want the longer form stuff to be a little bit more low key too. And it's fine if they don't get like hundreds of thousands of views. I kind of just want like um, I want the people that want to just hang out, take things seriously, but still have fun. But yeah, but maybe aren't just like sitting there wanting to get a headache from some of the flashier videos you see out there. I'm very capable of talking fast. If you want that, there's short form videos where I can definitely talk fast, but I want it to be a little bit more chill on Sunday mornings, and also some of the fantasy stuff, waiver wire, trade target stuff you'll see next week. Joe, you rocked the NBA picks last year. Appreciate you, Joe. NBA is very fun. Was I rucking? I ruck almost every morning. I tried one rucking video. I think the first one on the channel. It's not easy to be talking for 35 minutes straight and have like 40 pounds on your back. So I scrapped that after the first one. All right, let's talk some DraftKings. Jamar Chase. If we are paying up for an elite wide receiver, it is Jamar Chase. Yeah, I think I agree with you guys there. Get access to that game. If we're paying all the way up, I'm with you. A little more love for Nico than I expected, though. So that's good to know. I think the interesting poll, though, is going to be this one. This is my favorite poll of the day, I think. Top non-elite wide receiver play today. Price considered. Drake London, Jerry Jeudy, Tet McMillan, Emeka Egbuka, Brian Thomas Jr., T. Higgins, or other. Emeka Egbuka is going to be the highest owned of this group, I would imagine. But we're saying top non-elite. Like if you can only play one player on this list, who is it? Is it worth trading BTJ for Nico Collins? I have those guys in the exact same tier. So I think that I did a couple videos on like who I should be trading for, trading away to start the season. I want it to be like a pretty dramatic difference in my head, and I have those guys pretty similar. I love Nico Collins for the record. Aweb, thank you for that, my man. $2. Paying for my coffee this morning. Appreciate you, bro. Thank you. It's great to see you. Hope you had a great offseason, my man. You guys would be shocked. So I go to every Vikings game. We have season tickets. You guys would be shocked the amount of people that like will come say hi. It's like two types of people. If you see me, come say hi. It makes me feel cool, by the way, in front of like the mother-in-law, all that stuff. But it's two types of people. It's either like a really young, like someone that found me on TikTok, right? They're like 22 years old. They play some of the underdog picks, prize pick stuff. And then there's like the other group of people that like I'm totally down to like just have a beer with, and they normally come from this stream. So come say hi if you're in Minnesota or you're at one of the Vikings games. If you see me, BTJ getting a ton of love. Drake London. Drake London's kind of my guy this year. I can't unsee what he did at the end of the season. Nico, big day. A lot of people like Nico. Okay. Walking videos were great to watch. The walking videos I think were so different than whenever the whole idea was, I don't know if any of you guys watch like fitness content or anything. The whole idea was like Sam Sulek meets fantasy football. They were kind of fun to do. Took a long time to prepare for though. Ted McMillan also, but voted too fast. Yeah, he seems like the one that might be the most underpriced. Let's get the Egbuka stuff out of the way first. At 4,600, pricing came out so long ago, right? I don't think he'll be anywhere near this after that. Really, since like first round draft pick. So we have that, but also just like Chris Godwin and this recovery has taken so much longer than anyone else expected. I think when people when we see we basically see the contract that comes out for Chris Godwin, and we assume that he's going to be all good, and then it was just this death spiral of season long of him falling and falling and falling in drafts, and now we're sitting here in week one, and Egbuka just has this massive role. And Baker's kind of already been talking about how good this kid is, how they can play him all over the field. Like he's definitely going to be like a slot first guy, at least he was in college, but he can play anywhere. So he's someone that we're really excited about. And for week one, I try not to fall into the trap of just playing all of these young players that we've been talking about all off season. But at 4,600, that's going to be a hard one to ignore in a really up tempo game. Let's talk about Tet too, though. So, 5,200. Coker still hurt. Adam Thielen just got traded. So we have like another first round wide receiver. Huge target share out of the gates, I think. And Bryce Young really looked a lot better by the end of last season. And I was not someone that has ever really been like playing him in daily fantasy. But I think that like at 5,200, he might be one of those guys that we look at and we just wonder why we weren't more bullish on him going into week one at that price point. So both of those guys really stand out to me. And then Drake London, if you're going to go up to like the 6,500 plus range, he seems like the one that could be the most underpriced of like that group. Like the target share in general down the stretch was completely insane with Michael Penix. We saw it. We'll see. Do we have any news? Is Darnell Mooney playing? Because I'm actually curious about that. Because Darnell Mooney was like one of the sleepers that I really liked. He was someone that like had a really strong role. Those downfield targets, questionable it looks like still. So hopefully we get some more news on that. Let's see if we missed any news. Okay, so we do have another. Let's see. A few more things have trickled through since we got started today. Xavier Worthy, dislocated shoulder. Is that official? Bummer. 10 minutes ago it comes out. Kyler Murray added to the injury report with an illness. Shout out to the chat calling that one out. Interesting. I'm sure it looks like he's still going to be playing, though. We will see. Yeah, so if we get no Darnell Mooney, more targets for Drake London at 6,500 in this Falcons Bucks game. Really strong spot. Really strong spot. If we're just looking at like price, he's got to be like a top 5 guy, price to value. I like it. Have I ever done the Vikings viewing party on top of IDS at Windows Sky View Lounge? I have not. I live in a building very close by though. So we usually have like these little get-togethers before the games typically. My wife's friends and some of my friends will come over here and then we'll walk over. Especially when it's cold. It's nice to be inside. All right. A lot of Brian Thomas Jr. love in the chat. I mean, we talked a lot about even just like Trevor Lawrence earlier today. We saw what Liam Cohen was able to do for Baker Mayfield. We could see a similar situation with Trevor Lawrence. So talk about cheap stacks. Trevor Lawrence to BTJ, I think is still really strong. I'm trying to do a lot. I mean, you guys know at this point, I do a lot more game stacking, and that game is still like not my favorite game on the slate. I would say that there's pieces of it that are strong. Any chance Tootin plays the Bucky Irving role at some point? Possibly. Yeah, I like Tootin. I've been kind of staying away from that backfield. Might be a little bit early for week one to get there, but I could see it eventually being the case. We got one vote for T. Higgins. No one likes to play T. Higgins. But I mean, if you're playing Burrow stuff, the double certainly in play. It's just expensive. It's just expensive. Jerry Judy's another one that, like, if you're just looking at Jerry Judy versus Tet McMillan, that's like a big question, I think, because I think I have them like right next to each other in rankings. And the ceiling is pretty similar as well. But like Jerry Judy on the other side of your Cincinnati stacks, even like mini stacks, Chase Judy stuff, T Judy stuff, I think makes sense. It's a nice price. It's a nice price. That's a good point on Bucky for sure. They're trying to find like that similar type of player for that offense. That makes sense. Higgins stats versus the Browns, pretty good. Interesting. I mean, I always go back to like when Higgins was healthy, he doesn't get enough respect for how good he's been. Like he's outplayed Jamar Chase in many games. I can literally picture it in my head staring at that box score, wondering why I paid 3K more for Jamar Chase. I've just been burned by T. Higgins too many times. I try and ignore him, which is probably a mistake. Let's walk through tight end quickly. We'll build the team here. A couple more polls. Tight end, Trey McBride, David Njoku, Tucker Kraft, George Kittle, Brenton Strange, or other. We're just talking about Jerry Judy. The question to me is, how many Cleveland guys do you want? Do you want Jerry Judy or do you want David Njoku? That's a big question today. We got some Warren love in the chat. Warren is interesting. It's just like, how much is that offense going to actually throw? I'm with you. I like Warren a lot, but you still have to give a ton of carries to JT. You still got to give these wide receivers some target share. I'm worried about volume. It's the same. The story is old as time. These young wide receivers that are talented, or these young tight ends that are talented. That is one that, like, at 4,400, he's not free, right? He's not free, but you might get some lower ownership on him. I don't hate it. On the other side of your like Miami stacks, just trying to get some more upside in that game, I don't mind that. So if you're gonna try like a double or even just like a full game stack with Tua coming back on the other side with Tyler Warren, I don't hate that. I don't hate it. A lot of David Njoku love in the chat. Not surprising. I think at 4,700, he's probably the best option. We saw Joe Flacco just absolutely pepper this guy last time he was in a Cleveland uniform, right? So we'll see. If they can move the ball, I think that like he's going to be a big part of it. McBride at 6,200 is an interesting price. Just the volume was very dominant. I like him more on DraftKings, but the price is tougher. On FanDuel, he just wasn't scoring the touchdowns last year. I think we'll probably see some positive regression in that direction for a guy that saw that much volume. We'll see. A lot of targets at 6,200. Again, these guys, like, if they are priced like wide receivers, the volume looks pretty good. George Kittle is one of like my favorite tight end guys of like, I guess last year we were all over him in season long, which ended up being really strong. Played him more in DFS last year than I think I have in years. This year it just looks pretty good in general, again, just with like how much uncertainty there is in this offense. Even take CMC out of it. These wide receiver injuries, like Ricky Pearsall, I think is a nice price today too. We didn't talk about like these cheaper wide receivers yet. Maybe we'll pivot back there in a second. He could take some target share from Kittle. That's fair. I think the cheapest tight end that I'm looking at though is probably Strange. That's why I put him on this list at 3,300. So like, if you're gonna if you're like gonna have a non-BTGA team, looks pretty strong. No Evan Ingram. If he's playing the Evan Ingram role at 3,300, he's just really underpriced. Let's take a second though to talk through late swap. So if we're just looking at some of these games, let's move this down a little bit. Can I do that? It doesn't want to move. That's okay. Let's just go back to this. So if we're just looking at some of if we take the noon games completely out of it, basically. So we got Pittsburgh, New York Jets, we got San Francisco, Seattle, Tennessee, Denver, Detroit, Green Bay, Houston, LA. That's the games we got. So let's just add those so that we have some of these players to look at. Why is DraftKings so slow for me right now? These companies just like taking so much volume in week one. Sometimes these sites gets run a little bit slower. Okay, so now we got these guys on here. If like quarterback, we don't really talk about leverage a ton just because the ownership ends up being relatively flat. But if you're just looking at this, to me, the leverage seems to be guys like Bo Nix. No one's gonna play Bo Nix at 6,300. No one's gonna play Stafford with this back stuff against this Houston front. I don't think I'd probably go that direction either. No one's gonna play Jared Goff and Jordan Love. So like if you like that game, that Detroit and Green Bay game, which like sets up decently from like a ceiling perspective based on ownership, I think it's at least interesting. But running back, the leverage to me is probably just paying up for like Jahmyr Gibbs or just playing Christian McCaffrey. If you think McCaffrey is completely healthy and all this stuff is completely overblown, maybe it ends up being McCaffrey. McCaffrey's, it's nice that the San Francisco stuff is in the late games because then you can just throw McCaffrey in your flex and you can pivot if you need to, right? Jahmyr Gibbs seems like the one that, like, if you're really struggling, pivoting into that, I think makes some sense. At wide receiver, you don't have as much of like that, like high end, low owned ceiling to pivot into, but it's probably some of the guys we're talking about. It's Amon-Ra St. Brown at 7,100. Like these Detroit guys or LA guys like Puka at 7,600 still is going to give you some decent leverage. Those are guys that you'll probably want to get into. Like Bo Nix to Cortland Sutton stacks are going to be completely unowned. Pivoting into something like that, I think would make sense. Like tight end, the leverage is still probably just like finding one of these cheaper guys instead of going to Strange. Maybe it's a Chigakonkwo. Maybe it's a Jonnu Smith, something like that. Or if you just want to stay in that Detroit game, Sam Laporta. I think that makes some sense. Like leverage in general, like some of the lower owned guys that I like. I know we've talked about like what I think some of the best plays are. At running back, to me, it's like I said, I think it's Gibbs and Bijan, paying up for those guys. High ceiling, sub 15% ownership in some of these large fields, I think makes a lot of sense. Wide receiver is really strong in the mid range. But if you wanted to like back into like a Terry McLaurin at like 5% ownership, that could end up looking pretty good. If you want to take a shot on Cortland Sutton, like I said, at 6K, that can end up looking pretty good. I think that's probably like the main ones I'd be looking at. And then you're trying to basically just make, I think, just unique stacks. So if you're going to game stack something, like trying to back into like a sub 5% to a Tagovailoa with some of these Miami pieces and Indy pieces on it, I think makes some sense. But let's go into like, I think what most of the time is the favorite poll of the entire day. So favorite game stack. This is the lineup that we're going to build. Favorite game stack today: Cincinnati at Cleveland, Detroit at Green Bay, Tampa Bay at Atlanta, Carolina at Jacksonville, Miami at Indy, New York Giants at Washington Commanders, or other. This is an order of highest game totals. So that's how I came up with the order. So at the top, Cincy at Cleveland, highest game total. What do you guys think? What do we want to play today? We'll throw this in the $100 Millie Maker, turn this into $1 million in week one. That'd be fun. What are we thinking here, friends? Miami and Indy getting some love early. If you are just trickling in here, just the recap, I guess. If you're paying up at quarterback, for me, probably Jaden Daniels ahead of Joe Burrow. Both those guys are great plays. A little bit cheaper, like Trevor Lawrence, like Daniel Jones. We didn't talk about Drake May at all, but he's somewhat interesting for like if you want to trot out a naked quarterback over there. Usually not my style, but I think he's interesting. Running back to me, I think Jonathan Taylor, if I had to put someone at number one, but really love Achane and Connor right behind him. And then you can kind of get some of these other guys like high volume Kamara, Chase Brown, those type of guys I think make a ton of sense today too. Running back is absolutely loaded today. Wide receiver, you have just a ton of guys that are underpriced. Egbuka obviously at the top, probably going to be the most highly owned wide receiver. But then you got guys like Jerry Jeudy, Ted McMillan, Drake London, all fantastic plays. If you can get up to Jamar Chase, great. It's harder to do that with some of those other values, but you could get there. Tight end does seem to be like David Njoku and everyone else, but if you want to pay a little bit less, you can probably get into some Brenton Strange stuff, Tucker Craft stuff. Trey McBride's right there, but he's expensive. I think if we're just looking at defense, chalk defense is going to be Pittsburgh, 3,300. They're expensive. Both the defenses basically in that game look decent. I mean, you could probably talk yourself into some Giants stuff just with how good that Giants defense is going to be. 2,300, just the cheaper Giants defense, I think makes some sense. 49ers D, somewhat interesting. Cleveland D, just for some pass volume, 2,300 for Cleveland D. No one's going to play them. There's some options at D. We are very flat on this poll right now. Detroit and Green Bay leading the way so far for the favorite game stack. Interesting. Let's try and get this poll up a little bit. We got 265 people watching. Let's try and get this poll at least up to 50 because this is what we're going to spend some time on over the next 10 minutes or so building this lineup. What's up, Playmate? How we doing, man? Play the Bryce Young side. Interesting. Carolina and Jacksonville. Very poor defenses. Agreed. Agreed. If you're here for the first time and you're just listening, you're on your walk this morning trying to figure out what lineups you're going to play, pivot over the chat for 2 seconds, put your vote in, exclamation point, vote, space the number. I want to see where you guys are at here. We're voting for Detroit Green Bay, but no one wanted to play Amon Ra. I was thinking the same thing, Nick. We got a lot of people that are all over this Green Bay game, but we haven't talked much about it today. Interesting. Very interesting. Felix, thank you for subscribing, my man. Interesting. We got some up-tempo games, Cincy at Cleveland, Tampa Bay at Atlanta, Giants, Washington. Those are like the up-tempo games. Ownership-wise, I'm not against making this Detroit Green Bay scenario our team. It's just one we haven't really talked about much today. I'm going to let this get to ideally 50 votes was the goal. But if we get to 40 and we have a clear winner, I think that's fair. Still like Tampa Bay, Atlanta. That's a solid game. Called out on a walk. Hey, I know what most people are doing right now. They're not looking at my ugly mug. That's for sure. There are a lot of things to talk through, I guess, on the Green Bay side. That's a tougher game to sift through, but we could try and figure it out. I'm willing. I'm up for the challenge. That's what you guys want. Looks like Tampa Bay and Atlanta is leading the way now. There's definitely some firepower in that one we can get into. A lot of scenarios. A lot of scenarios. If for some reason you guys are watching the show and you guys have not checked out Prize Picks yet, they do have their, I mean, all of the offers right now for these sites for week one are like by far the best that you'll get all year, basically. So Prize Picks is doing you play $5, you get 50 immediately. And then they also have a free square. So they have like Lamar Jackson over like 1 passing yard. So you get that if you use code Holka Live. That lets me know that you guys came from the live stream. Link in the description, all that good stuff. All right. One more vote gets us to 40. I think we have a clear winner. Tampa Bay, Atlanta. Tampa Bay, Atlanta. So, as we always do, I'm going to let you guys pick the quarterback and then we'll build from there. All right, QB. So who do we want to play at QB? Baker or Penix? I'm going to let this ride to 10 to 15 votes. Do we want a Baker team or a Penix team? What do you guys think? Baker team or Penix team? What are we thinking here, friends? A lot of Baker. 12 votes, 9 for Baker. I think we have a consensus. We have consensus. All right, Baker it is. Let's jump over to DK here. And there's the Lamar that I'm talking about. You can see at the top of your screen, Lamar Jackson over 1 yard on Prize Picks. Okay, so I think what I would like to do here is we're going to start with Baker. I think if we're not playing Jaden Daniels, I don't hate the idea of getting in Giants D to start. If my DraftKings wants to cooperate here, let's get all these games back in. Baker. I think Giants D because of how cheap they are, but also if we're not playing Jaden Daniels, let's at least start there as a starting point, right? So if we're playing Baker, I think that we just double him up with Mike Evans and Emeka Egbuka. You guys cool with that? I think that's a decent starting point. No one's talking about Mike Evans today, but if we're playing a Baker team, I think that's the starting point. You guys cannot see. There we go. Didn't even hit the right button. It's week 1. Sorry. Baker and Giants. I would have made that entire roster without one person saying that they can't see. Let's get Evans in there. 6,600 for Evans. Let's get Egbuka in there. What do we like on the other side? We got options, right? We could play some Bijan stuff on the other side. We can play Drake London on the other side. I honestly think we could probably get both of those in. I like the idea of paying up to be contrarian for like a Bijan Robinson because I don't think most people are going to do that. And if this game ends up being a lot of points, he's obviously going to be involved. So let's see where this takes us. If we start with something like this as our main stack, our main game stack, we got Baker to Evans to Egbuka, bringing it back with Bijan and Drake London, and then we're leveraging what's probably going to be one of the most popular quarterbacks in Jaden Daniels. How do we feel about this start? You guys on board with this? What do we want to do now? So we have less to spend at tight end now, for sure. We could probably still get in a pretty solid running back on this team. We got a running back, a tight end, and a flex to go. What do you guys think? Rashad White? Ugh, gross. He's going to catch passes, though. And he's cheap. Would I consider Bucky instead of Egbuka to try and be contrarian with the Baker double? I don't hate that idea, Trevor. I'm open to not playing Egbuka on this team. Building a unique Tampa stack would be interesting. Possible mini with Chuba. Interesting. Okay. We could still get in probably like a Cade Otton if we really wanted to jam in a tight end. I think we could. If we're just staring at some of the cheap tight ends, right? If we're staring at some of the cheap ones, you could make a case, I suppose, for Cade Otton in this game. Basically, like similar price point to Strange is kind of like the idea there. I don't hate it. I don't hate it. We need a cheap tight end either way. So let's just throw him in as like a placeholder and see where we're at. Because we're only at 5,800 the rest of the way if we went there. So this is like the full game stack on slot. But that's kind of what we're playing for here. So we could take out one of these other weapons. We could take out Evans and Egbuka. One of those. See what Bucky leads us to. I'm not huge on Bucky this game, though. I think there's just better. Like, the running back plays are so good that I want to try and get at least another one of these in. Like, is there a way to get James Conner on this roster? Probably. There's probably still a way to get James Conner on it. If we put Conner in right now, that leaves us with 5,500 in the flex, which isn't the worst. Isn't the worst. I don't think we can get in like a Chan unless we want to go really cheap. Unless we wanted to go really cheap. What do you guys think? I think the cheap tight end is kind of a lock. It could be too much of this game though. 26,000 people in this $100 Millie Maker. But I still think there's some ceiling in just picking the right game on this. I mean, but at 5,500, that still puts us in a decent position if we just wanted to play like Jerry Jeudy. If we wanted to get in someone like that. Don't hate it. What's up, Joseph? Football is back. Let's go. Have enough for Travion. We could try and get one of those guys in. Is Drake London too much? Because he's obviously not cheap. That's what we have to ask ourselves. Playing a Baker team without Igbuka would be unique. I have that kind of in my head right now, too. Might be an interesting direction to take this. Boomer bust. I don't think Bucky is the direction I'd want to go. George, I like Tet. My thing with Egbuka is yes, he's going to be high owned. Well, Poker's saying yeah, the salary is worth it, but also like we're talking about the combination, right? So Baker, Evans, Egbuka, and K. Dotton. Not many people are going to have all of them together currently. But if we didn't have Egbuka here, we better love a cheap wide receiver. So who would we put in there in the place, I suppose? So we would probably want to grab some leverage with this play. So we probably would want to get in. I'm trying to see if there's something that would make sense with correlation here on the cheaper side. If we wanted to get in like a Ricky Pearsall, we could. That doesn't give us much correlation, obviously, but he's cheap. Makes some sense. Trey Tucker, 3,100, very cheap. Ricky Pearsall, 4,500. So like we're basically would be looking at like that Agbuka pivot. And you probably get half the ownership for Ricky Pearsall if you wanted to go that direction. What are we left with if we just go Olave here? 5K left if we go Olave. So that gets us to like, I mean, we could still do Olave, or we could still do Egbuka. And then we got our mini stack of James Conner and Olave together. Gives us 400 left. So if we didn't want to play Kate Otten at that point, we could get up to like a Tucker Craft as a one-off, which I don't hate. Get into like a Jonnu Smith if we wanted to go that direction. Tucker Craft at 4K as a one-off is somewhat interesting. Somewhat interesting. That fits. We could get in Tyler Warren for 200 more. No, we can't because Giants are cheap enough. You guys like the Olave idea, or am I forcing that one a little bit? Shaheed at 4,600 is very cheap. Looking at like sub 5K wide receivers, no one's going to play Calvin Ridley today. Tough matchup against Denver. Travis Hunter at 5K. No one's going to play Travis Hunter in that first game. Ricky Pearsall. I mean, I would say that, like, if we're just looking at ceiling, I don't think Pearsall versus Shaheed is that much different. Shaheed's going to be like 2% owned. So, like, the Shaheed Connor mix, if we took out Olave, what does that get us to in the flex? Well, I guess if we go Igbuka, that gets us to 4,700 at tight end. That would get us to an Njoku if we wanted to go there. What do we think about that combo? So Baker, Evans, Egbuka, bring back with Bijan, Drake London. We got our mini stack with James Conner, Shaheed. And then we got Njoku as our tight end. Somewhat interesting. It's probably my favorite combo so far, because that gets us into one of these Cleveland guys that we want. We still have some big play upside with Shaheed, but lower owned, lower price. It gives us like a little bit of a pivot to James Conner with him together, mini stack in that game. I like the idea of getting one piece of this Cleveland Cincy game, so I don't mind that. This one fits together in my head. What do you guys think? Shaheed is definitely off the board. If we're talking pure ceiling, though. And I think the idea of like trying to like pair James Conner with someone else in that game that's low owned makes some sense. Another direction we could go, I think this is my favorite combination so far. So if we didn't go Shaheed and Connor, what happens if we get to like a Chase Brown here, since we have Njoku? That gets us to a $4,100. Oh, let's just throw a book in there. That gets us to a $4,100 flex. So kind of this tight end range. But what does the wide receivers at 4,100 and down look like? That's kind of like where that drop off is, where it's just not as strong. So like we kind of need that salary that we get from moving from Chase Brown to James Conner. We kind of need it. Unless we want to play double tight end, which I don't think I do. Romeo Dobbs at 4,300. No one's going to play him. I think I like where we were before. Yeah. I like the idea, though. What's going on here? There we go. All right, which would be the late game here? We don't have a lot of late game stuff. I will say that. Do we have any late game players? Houston, no. Rams, no. Detroit, Green Bay, no. Tennessee, Denver, no. San Francisco, Seattle, no. So this is an early only lineup, basically, if you wanted to throw it in some early only stuff. But I don't hate this idea. So we got, let's go with this for right now. Baker to Mike Evans to Egbuka. We're bringing it back with Bijan and Drake London, just betting on that game overall. James Conner, Shaheed mini stack. We're not playing Jaden Daniels, so we got Giants defense here, and then we got an Njoku one-off. I like it. I'm a fan of this. All right, guys. Appreciate you guys being with us. Week 1, the big show. We got through it. Make sure you guys subscribe if you're here for the first time. Check out the waiver wire and trade targets video that's going up on the channel here shortly for next week. Check out all the short form stuff as well if you love to play some of the pick'em sports betting stuff out there. Player props. Make sure you guys sign up with Prize Picks, code Hulk Alive, all that good stuff. You'll check out all of the picks that come across whatever you get your swipe and short form stuff. You'll see my ugly mug. But this was fun, guys. I'm happy we're doing this again this year. We'll see you guys next week, 9 a.m. Eastern time. And best of luck today. Talk soon.